Hey guys, Chris here, founder of Rooted Music. Guys, at Rooted, our goal is to help you learn to play the music that you love by coaching you on the why and not just the what. And we're going to do just that in today's tutorial. But before we do, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel here so you don't miss out on any of the new worship tutorials that we have for you. And I'd also love for you to check out the links in the description of this video where you can download our chord chart to this song for free, and also where you can learn more worship songs just like this for just $1 for the first 30 days. Check out those links and let's go ahead and dive into the video.
Hey everyone, this is JT with Rooted Music, here with you guys today for an advanced piano tutorial of the song Famous For, I Believe, by Tauren Wells, and it is from his album Citizen of Heaven. And by the time this video is over today, you're going to know everything you need to know to play Famous For, and I'm so excited to get to walk through this song with you today. It's a really wonderful song. The whole album is fantastic, but this song in particular is one of my favorites from this album, and so I'm super happy to be with you here today. But before we just go head first right into the song, there's a few pieces of information that you and I need to know, and by learning this and taking the time to get this right before we try to play the song is going to make playing the song so much easier. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. So if you look in the lower right hand corner of the web page where you're watching this video, you're going to see attachments, PDF attachments for the natural number chart for this song, the chord chart, and the letter notation for this song, and the sheet music. And we're going to be referencing all three of those today in this video. So right now I've got the natural number chart pulled up here today, and we're going to look at this information here at the top of the page, and this is going to really help kind of set the stage for how we're going to play this song. So the first thing we need to look at here is the key, and the key of Famous For is B flat. So we're playing in the key of B flat, and the key of B flat has two flats, and those are B flat and E flat. Now if you look to the right of our key here, you're going to see that we conveniently have the notes of the scale listed right here. So let's go ahead and play through our B flat major scale, and this is super important because all of these notes here are going to be the building blocks of all the chords and of all the melodies we're going to play in this song. So let's play through our scale. So we have B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and B flat. So you can see we're playing mostly on the white keys except for our B flats and E flats here in the song. Great. Now, like I said earlier, we have the natural number chart attached to the lower right-hand corner of this web page. So if you'd rather read the natural number chart, you certainly can. If you'd rather read the letter chart, you certainly can. I'm going to be reading off the natural number chart today, but I'll be referencing both the letter and number names throughout this video. But let's go ahead and build our scale now in natural numbers. And so for natural numbers, all we do is we simply replace our letter names with numbers, and we start at 1. So B flat is 1. C is 2, D is 3, E flat is 4, F is 5, G is 6, A is 7, and because B flat was 1 at the beginning, it's going to be 1 at the end again. So we finish on 1. We don't go to 8, we finish on 1. So let's go ahead and play through that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And there we go. That's our B flat scale in natural numbers. And natural numbers is just so helpful to us as musicians, especially if we have to transpose or change keys really quickly, because the numbers stay the same, because natural numbers focuses on the relationship and of the distances between the notes instead of the actual names of the notes. And so it's a different way to look at it, but it is very helpful, and depending on how you're learning music, you may prefer the letter names or the natural numbers, and that's why we provide both to you as a student. So great, so now we know our key and our scales. Let's go ahead and look through this song really quick and see how many unique individual chords we need to know to play Famous For. So we're looking here in the intro. We have our 4 chord, which is E flat. We have a 6 chord, which is G minor. We have our 5 chord, which is F. Nothing new here. We have a 1 chord now, which is B flat in our verse 1. Verse 2, still have that 1 chord, nothing new there. Here in the chorus now, we have our 5/7, which is our F over A chord. So that's a new one. And then we keep scrolling down. Here in the refrain, we have nothing new. In verse 3, we now have a 1/3 chord, or a B flat over D. So that's something new. And then I think for the sake of time, we can stop because we don't have any new chords past that. So we have a total of 6 chords that you and I need to know to play this song. And we're going to build these chords right now so we get a chance to kind of get familiar with them and be able to visualize them on the piano before we try to play them in time with the song. So we're going to build these chords in ascending scale order, and we'll start with B flat. And when we're playing these chords in the block chord style, we're going to be playing triads, or chords of 3 notes, in our right hand, and generally I play an octave of the root note, or the note that comes after the slash, in my left hand. So let's go ahead and talk about what a triad is really quick. So a triad, like I said, is a chord composed of 3 notes. So here's our B flat, or our 1 chord, and every triad has 3 parts. The first one is the root, which is the namesake of the chord. So for a B flat or a 1 chord, B flat, or the first note of the scale, is going to be our root. Then the second part of our triad is the note that we call the third. And we call it a third because there's 3 letters in this interval. So B flat to D, D is our third in this case. B flat, C, D, we have 3 letters in our interval, B flat, C, and D. So that's why this one's called a third. So we have a root, we have a third, and then the top note of our triad is called the fifth. And we call it the fifth because this top note is the distance of a fifth away from our root note. So we have 5 letters between B flat and F. So we have B flat, C, D, E flat, F right there. So we can ignore flats for right now when we're counting our letters. We're just focusing on the letters. So we got B, C, D, E, F, 5 letters. And that's why this is the fifth. So again, we have root, third, and fifth. And every triad we play is going to have a root, a third, and a fifth, just like that. So whether it's a B flat chord, whether it's an E flat chord, we still have a root, third, fifth. Whether it's a G minor chord, we still have root, third, fifth. So every chord has a root, a third, and a fifth. And then when I'm playing in the block chord style, based off of a chord chart, I also will play an octave of the root note in my left hand, just like that. Just kind of fill out the sound, provide that nice low end on the piano, just like that. So when we're playing in the block chord style, we're going to play our triads in our right hand. And like I said, I like to play the octave down here. If that's too tough or your hands can't quite reach that, you can just play a single note like that. Or if that's still too tough, just play your right hand. And then you can add your left hand in later on. But let's go ahead now and build our chords. And so I kind of already went through our B flat or 1 chord, but we'll just go through it again really quick. So for B flat or our 1 chord, we have B flat's the root, D is the third, F is our fifth, add the left hand, and there we go. Next, we have a B flat over D, or a 1/3 chord, which we find in the verse 3 and some parts of the bridge and final chorus here. And so let's scroll down. Here's our 1/3 chord here, and this is what we call a slash chord, or some people call it a letter over letter or number over number chord. And what we're doing here is that each one of these numbers tells us something very different but equally important. We have to make sure we get both of these right. So let's go ahead and talk about how we play our slash chords. So for example, in our 1/3 or B flat over D, whatever comes before the slash is what we're playing in the right hand, and whatever comes after it is what we're playing in the left hand. All right, so because we have a 1 here in front of our slash, that means we're going to be playing a B flat chord in our right hand like this, just like we built earlier. So B flat, D, F, just like that. But instead of playing B flat in my left hand, because the slash, because the number that comes after the slash is what we're playing in the left hand, and that says 3, I'm going to move my B flat to D here, just like that. So this is a 1/3 or B flat over D. So again, the right hand stays the same, but we're just changing our left hand from B flat to D. Great. The next chord we need to know is our E flat or our 4 chord. So we have E flat's the root, G is the third, B flat is the fifth at our left hand, and there we go. That's E flat or our 4 chord. Then after that, we have an F chord or our 5 chord. So F is the root, A is the third, C is the fifth. There we go. That's F or our 5 chord. Next, we have our, scroll back up here to the top so we can see the scale a little easier. Next, we have our 5/7 or F over A. And then we're going to do the same thing here like we did with our 1/3 or B flat over D. We're going to play our F or 5 chord in the right hand, the one we just built. But instead of F in the left hand, we're going to play A. There we go. So we have our 5/7 or F over A. Great. And then the last chord we need to know is our G minor chord or our 6 chord. And so we have G is the root, B flat is the third, and D is the fifth. Then add our left hand. And there we go. That's G minor or our 6 chord. Now let's go ahead and review those chords because I know we went through them really quickly. We're going to go through them one more time. So we have B flat, which is our 1 chord, B flat over D, which is 1/3. We have E flat, which is our 4 chord, F, which is our 5 chord, F over A, which is 5/7, and G minor, which is our 6 chord. Great. Now, one thing I do want to talk about before we move on, is that for this song, I'm going to be playing some inversions when I'm playing in the block chord style. So let's talk really quickly about what inversions are. And inversions are so helpful because they make my piano playing a little more efficient, but it also allows me to keep my hands in the region of the piano that I want them to play. So I really like my right hand to be in this middle C region of the piano here, and as you can see, when I was building my chords in ascending scale order, I was playing way up here, and I don't want to play quite that high when I'm playing in the block chord style, especially if I'm playing on my own or by myself at home, or whether I'm performing this song by myself on piano. I want to keep my hands in this middle C region because it just provides that nice low end down here. So we're going to invert some of these chords to make our hands fit there. So let's talk about chord inversions really quick. So when we're talking about inverting chords, we're going to start here with our B flat or our 1 chord, and we're in what we call root position, meaning B flat or the 1 or the root of this chord is the lowest note I'm playing in the right hand. But what happens if I take this B flat and move it up here? I have B flat, D, F. This is the exact same chord. It's still a B flat or a 1 chord because it's the same notes, but I'm playing them in a different order, and we call this first inversion because the third of the chord is now the lowest note in our right hand. And I can also take this D, or the third of the chord, and move it up here and play B flat, D, F. And when I have the fifth of the chord, in this case it's F, or the fifth note of our scale, on the bottom, this is called second inversion, just like that. So I can have root position with the root on the bottom, I can have first inversion with the third of the chord on the bottom, and I can have second inversion, which has the fifth of the chord on the bottom here. So we're going to use these inversions to help us keep our hands in a specific spot. So now I'm going to show you the inversions that I'm going to be playing as I'm playing this song from the chord chart in the block chord style. You don't have to play these inversions, but I do think it's really helpful, again, to make my piano playing more efficient. I don't have to hop my hands around as much, and I can keep my hands where I want them in this region of the piano here. So I'm going to start by playing my B flat here in second inversion. So this is our second inverted B flat chord. I got B flat, D, F, or our 1 chord right here. I'm going to keep the right hand in the same spot for our 1/3 or B flat over D. So for the rest of this video, this is how I'll be playing all these chords. So B flat or my 1 chord, here's B flat over D or 1/3, still in second inversion here. Next, I'm going to play my E flat or my 4 chord. I'm going to play this one in first inversion, where I have the E flat on the top and the third of the chord here is the lowest note in my right hand. That's first inversion of our E flat. Next, I'm going to play F or our 5 chord in root position right here. I'm going to play our 5/7 or F over A also in root position. I'm going to play my G minor or 6 chord also in root position. So we're really only inverting our B flat over D, and E flat chords. And here's an example of why this is so functional. So in the very beginning of the song, we have our intro going from E flat to G minor. So if I was playing my E flat here in first inversion, there's only 1 note difference between this first inverted E flat or 4 chord to my 6 chord or G minor, and all I have to do is move this E flat down to D, and now I'm at my G minor 6. So 4 chord to 6 chord. Now if I was playing this in root position, I'd have to hop, like 4 chord to 6 chord here. And so it's easier for me just to play and only have to move this note by 1/2 step to get to my 6 chord. So that's why using inversions is so helpful. So I know we went through that pretty quickly. If you need to, go ahead and you can rewind the video and watch how we built the chords. We started with them all in root position. You can play those chords in root position if you desire, but I think learning the inversions is going to make this a lot easier to play in the long run. Great. So now we've talked about our key, we've talked about the scale, and we've talked about the chords. There's one other thing we've got to talk about before we dive into the rhythmic elements of this song, and that is that at Rooted, we have in our piano tutorial library informational videos on every single key that you're going to see in music, including the key of B flat. So we have this informational video on the key of B flat that covers so much more information than what we could cover today in the few minutes we have at the beginning of this video, where you're going to learn why the key of B flat has 2 flats. You're going to learn the differences between major and minor chords, how to build the scale, how to build these chords. You're going to learn more about natural numbers. You're going to learn so much more than what we could cover in this video. So if anything was confusing to you about how to build the scale or play the scale or build chords, I highly recommend you pause this video and go check out that informational video on the key of B flat. It's a pretty short video, about 20 to 25 minutes. And in that, you're going to learn so much. And what's really cool about that is that a lot of the principles of functional harmony that you're going to learn in that video apply to every song and every key. So definitely pause this video, check that out. Even if you understood everything I just went through, still go watch that video. I guarantee you're going to learn from that and become a better musician because of it. So definitely go check that video out in our piano library. All right, so now that we've covered that, let's go ahead and talk about the rhythmic elements of Famous 4, and we need to cover our time signature and our tempo. All right, so now that we've covered all of the harmonic elements of the song, let's dive into the rhythmic elements of this song, which are the time signature and tempo. So the time signature for Famous 4 here is 4/4, and our time signature, like our slash chords, each one of those numbers tells us a very important thing. So let's talk about what our time signature means here really quick. So the first number in any time signature tells us how many beats are in a measure. So for Famous 4, we have 4 beats per measure. So when we're counting through our measures, we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that, simple enough. Now the second number here tells us what kind of note is considered one beat, because it's cool to say I got 4 beats in a measure, but what defines one beat? That's where the second number comes in, and it tells us that a quarter note is considered one beat. So every measure will have equal to 4 quarter notes worth of time in it. So when I'm counting through the measures, we just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. The measures just consistently flow from one right into the next. There's no pauses or breaks in between each measure. It's just a nice smooth transition. And our measures start when we start the song, and they just continuously go one after another until we get to the end of this song. So counting to 4 is going to be very helpful in this video today. So definitely get used to counting to 4. Great. And then the tempo for Famous 4 here is 86 beats per minute. And so 86 beats per minute is a little bit on the faster side of our tempo spectrum, especially in like worship songs. Sometimes we might play songs at 60 or 58 or 68 or 70, somewhere in that range. This is more of a kind of medium tempo. It's not too fast, not too slow. There's some worship songs that we play that are 120 beats per minute or 130, which is pretty fast, but 86 beats per minute. It's kind of right in that sweet spot in the middle where it's not too fast, but it's not too slow. It's got a good energy, but it certainly doesn't drag. So we're really going to really focus on playing at 86 beats per minute. And as musicians, our natural tendency is we always want to speed up. So this song, like I said, has great energy, but the temptation will be we want to play it a little faster than 86. So if you're practicing at home, you may want to get a metronome out and really focus on playing at 86 beats per minute. Or if you're playing along to the song, again, your natural tendency may want to be to speed up, but just make sure you're playing right along in time with the song. Great. And then the last thing we need to know here is our song order, or the form of our song. And this is kind of the outline or the roadmap of how we're going to play the song. We start with our intro, then we go to verse 1, we have verse 2, we have a chorus, then we have a refrain, verse 3, a chorus, 2 bridges in a row, another chorus, a refrain, and then we go back to verse 1 at the end. So that's the order or the outline of our song. Great, so now we've covered everything we need to know. We've gone through our scale, we've gone through the chords we need to know, we've talked about even inverting those chords, we've talked about our time signature, our tempo, and the song order, or the form of the song. So we are ready to go and now dive into this song and start looking at this chord chart and the sheet music. So one other thing I want to touch on really quick before we get to actually learning these sections of the song is let's talk about how do we read a chord chart, just in case somebody watching this video maybe has never looked at a chord chart before and might be a little intimidated by what we're looking at right here. So we'll start here in verse 1, and we're going to see we have the lyrics to the song here, but we also have some numbers or letters strategically placed above these lyrics. And so what we have listed here, those numbers and letters indicate the chord changes that happen throughout this song. So if I was going to play verse 1 here, I would say the lyrics and say, "There is no fear, 'cause I believe." Just like that. So I played my 4 chord or E flat as the word fear was being said. Then I went to the 6th chord or G minor on I, and then I went to my 5 chord or F on believe. And so that's how we can read a chord chart. Now again, this doesn't rhythmically tell us everything we need to know to play this. It's just indicating where our chord changes happen. So I could play the changes just like I did. There is no fear, 'cause I believe. I could do that. Or I could add maybe like a quarter note pattern in the right hand, something like this, where I go, there is no fear, 'cause I believe. So it's really up to you as a musician when you're reading off of a chord chart or a number chart to fill in the gaps rhythmically. This is just showing us where the chord changes happen, and you can kind of figure that out or what to do based on what the rest of the band's doing if you're playing this in a live setting or playing it along with the recording. Like this song starts pretty slow, so maybe playing the chord changes would be great, and then as the band has more energy, playing those quarter notes in the right hand, for example, would add a little more rhythm and a little more just musical intrigue to your part, which would go along with what the band's doing there as well. So that's how we read our chord chart. We just play the chord changes, how they line up with the lyrics. But what do we do in a section here like the intro where we don't have lyrics to kind of help us figure out when to play? Well, at Rooted, we've come up with a little system that makes playing in instrumental sections really easy. So anytime we see a single chord like here or a group of chords kind of tied together here, separated by a space, that indicates one measure. So our intro here has 4 total measures, and then chords that are connected here with a little dash indicates that these chords share one measure. So our first measure of the intro has our 4 chord, which is E flat, our 6 chord, which is G minor. Then our second measure is just our 5 chord or F, and then we repeat those 2 measures again, just like that. So we'll talk about how to count through that there in the intro when we get to that in just a second, but I just wanted to point out that anytime you see chords connected with a little dash, that indicates that those 2 chords fit in the same measure. Any chord that's just by itself like this, or any number or letter here, indicates it gets its own measure. Great, so now we've covered that. Let's go ahead and start looking at the song in detail. And what we're going to do is we're going to go section by section and break it down. We're going to explain how to play it in the block chord style if you were just playing off of the chord chart. And then we're going to go to the sheet music and point out some things that may be helpful to you if you want to play the note for note piano part as well in the sheet music. And at the end of this video, you're going to see me play this song with the recording. I'm going to play the part from the sheet music so you can see how it all fits together. But in the teaching of this video, you're going to see me playing a lot in the block chord style as well. So you'll be able to kind of learn both ways, and you can play however you want to as you're playing this song. So let's start here in the intro. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply play through it. We have 4 measures here. I'm going to count our way through it, and then we'll break it down. So here it is, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we go, just like that. As you heard me counting 1, 2, 3, 4, because we have 4 beats in a measure, and we had 4 total measures here. So our first measure, we have our E flat or a 4 chord, gets 3 beats. Then we go to the 6 chord or G minor for 1 beat. So I've got 3 beats on this one and 1 here. And then the second measure, we have our 5 chord, which is F, that gets a whole measure. Third measure of the intro, we have our 4 chord or E flat, it gets 3 beats. Our G minor or 6 chord here gets the last beat of our third measure. Our fourth measure here is our 5 chord or F, and that gets a whole measure as well. And that's really the intro. Nothing too complicated. We're just switching between these 3 chords here, and as long as you're counting your way through it, you're going to have no problems playing the intro. All right, so now that we've covered the intro in the block chord style from the chord chart here, let's look at the sheet music and the intro really quick and just make sure we have everything good here. Also, one thing I want to point out in the sheet music is that all of the chord changes that you see in the national number chart or the chord chart, it's going to be those chord changes are going to be listed here along the top of each line of the sheet music. We ran out of space really, so we only could put the letter names in, but they are the same exact chord changes you're playing in the chord chart or number chart there. So let's look here. Again, we got our first 4 measures here in the intro. Nothing too complicated here. Again, we got 3 beats on this E flat, 1 on the G minor, and a whole measure of F. One thing just to point out is that we do have an F, an A, B flat, and C all together here on this F chord. So it does sound, there's a little dissonance in that chord, but it's intentional. So if you play this and you think it sounds kind of funny, you're playing it correct. So we got the F, A, B flat, and C, and these 2 notes here together is where we get that tension. But it sounds really good in the context of the song, but just wanted to point that out really quick. Great, so nothing too complicated with the intro. Let's go back to our chord chart now, and let's look at verse 1. All right, so here we are in verse 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play through verse 1. I'm going to say the lyrics, show you how it all kind of ties together and how they relate to one another, and then we'll break it down. So here it is, 1, 2, 3. There is no fear, 'cause I believe. There is no doubt, 'cause I have seen your faithfulness, my fortress, over and over. And there we go. just like that. So in verse 1, we have a total of 8 measures. And what's really cool about this is that this chord progression here in verse 1 really, to at least the first half of verse 1, really reflects and follows the same chord progression we have in the intro. So it's not too different than what we had in the intro. So as we're starting in verse 1, we have our 4 chord or E flat on Fear, and we're going to hold that for 3 beats. And then we're going to go to our 6 chord or G minor for the last beat of that measure on I. So here's our first measure right here. Then our second measure of verse 1 is our 5 chord or F on Believe. We're going to play that for a full measure. Then we come down to the next line. It's the same thing again. We've got 3 beats of our 4 chord or E flat on Doubt, 1 beat of our 6 chord or G minor on I. Here's our third measure. Then our fourth measure right here is this 5 chord or F on Have. Play that for a whole measure. Now here in the fifth measure of verse 1, it's going to change just a little bit. The rhythms are the same, but instead of going to our 6 chord or G minor, we now go to our 1 chord or B flat. So we have our 4 chord or E flat on Ness of Faithfulness for 3 beats. Go to our 1 chord or B flat, just kind of on the tail end of My for 1 beat. Then we go to our 5 chord or F on the Tress of Fortress for 1 whole measure. And then here we have 2 measures of our E flat or 4 chord on the second over of Over and Over. So we're going to hold this one out here for 2 full measures. So again, we have 8 total measures here in verse 1. So nothing too complicated. Again, just remember this third line, we swap out our 1 chord or B flat for this 6 chord or G minor here. And then we hold this 4 chord here at the end for 2 measures. So now that we've covered that in the chord chart, let's go ahead and look at it in the sheet music and see what we have going on here. And it's nothing too complicated really. In fact, it's actually a little simpler than what we were playing in the intro. We have a couple less notes in these chords. Again, roughly the same rhythms through these first few measures. We do have our B flat here in the 5th measure of verse 1, so just be aware of that. And then here we have, in the last 2 measures with that E flat, we have these tied notes here. And tied notes can be a little confusing, so anytime we see tied notes, it's going to be the same note on either end. And what we're doing here is we play this the first time, just play this right here. And with a tied note, we don't play this, but we're adding on that value of those notes. So we would hold this right here for 2 whole measures. So I don't replay it. I'm just going to hold it for the 2 measures there. So anytime we see tied notes, that's what we do there. Great, so that was verse 1. Let's go ahead and move on to verse 2 here in the chord chart. All right, so here we are now in verse 2 in the chord chart. And one thing that's really convenient about this song and a lot of worship songs that we play is that some of the sections are fairly repetitive. And once we kind of learn one part of the song, we can take what we learned out of that part and apply it to another part of the song. And that's what happens here in verse 2. Verse 2 plays the exact same way if you're playing off the chord chart in the block chord style as verse 1 did. So for the sake of time, we're not going to go through verse 2 because it's the exact same in the block chord style as verse 1. The only thing that's different between them is we have different lyrics in verse 2, but it's still 8 measures. The chord progressions, the rhythms, everything's the same. We just have different words now, and we still finish with our 2 measures of our E flat or 4 chord here on the end. So for the sake of time, we'll skip over that. But let's go to the sheet music and see if we have anything different here in verse 2. In verse 2, we do have something very different in the sheet music. We are playing fifths here in our left hand part here, kind of representing those chords. In the right hand, we are playing octaves. So we're going to start with a G here, and then move through these octaves here, just like that. If you want a reference of that, again, you can look at the end of this video where you're going to see me playing this note-for-note piano part from the sheet music here. So you can see how that lines up with the song. But just be aware, we got octaves in the right hand, kind of hopping all around with a little melody there to back up the vocals in verse 2. And again, we have our tied note here to finish out verse 2. Great, so now we've covered verse 1 and verse 2. Let's go ahead and move on to the chorus. All right, so here we are now in the chorus. I'm going to do the same thing that I did in verse 1. I'm going to play through this and say the lyrics, and then we'll break it down. So here it is, 1, 2. Make way through the waters, walk me through the fire, do what you are famous for, what you are famous for, shut the mouth of lions, bring dry bones to life, and do what you are famous for, what you are famous for. And there we go. Just like that. So I did have to scroll down a little bit there, so I did have to kind of pause for a second here, but when you're playing through it, you don't have to pause there. I just had to because I needed to scroll down. So let's go back to the top now and work our way through the chorus. So the chorus has a total of 8 measures. just like the verses did. And most sections of songs have multiples of 4 as the measure number. Sometimes you'll see some songs that have 10 or 6 or things like that, but generally our sections of the song is going to be multiple of 4 measures. So we start with our 4 chord or E flat on Waters, that gets a whole measure. Then we come down here to our 5 chord or F on Fire, that gets a whole measure. Then we come down to our 6 chord or G minor on Famous, that gets a whole measure. Then our 4th measure, we split between our 5/7 and F over A and our 1 chord here. So this one gets 2 beats on Famous, the first 2 beats of the measure. Then this one gets the other 2 beats. This 1 chord or B flat gets the other 2 beats of that measure. And then we repeat that same 4 measures over again. So we have our 4 chord or E flat on Lions for a measure, our 5 chord on or F on Life for a measure, our 6 chord or G minor on Famous for a measure. And we finish the chorus with a measure of 2 beats of 5/7 or F over A on Famous, and then 2 beats of our 1 chord or B flat, kind of at the end of Famous 4. All right, and there we go. That's how we play the chorus in the block chord style. Nothing too complicated. But let's go ahead now and look at the sheet music here and just make sure we don't have anything that's going to catch us off guard here in the chorus. So here we just have general chords again, following the same chord changes that we have in the chord chart. We do have a couple runs of eighth notes here in the right hand. Not too hard. It's just nothing too complicated there. So don't let that intimidate you, because it's not actually as hard as it looks there. But again, just got chords. Nothing too crazy, just some eighth notes there. So pretty straightforward first chorus, nothing too crazy there. So let's move on now to the refrain. Here we are now in the refrain after that first time through the chorus, and the refrain is a total of 4 measures, and this is going to play actually the exact same way that the intro does, but now we just have lyrics over the top. So I'm going to play through this and say the lyrics, and then we'll break it down. So 1, 2, 3, I believe in you, God, I believe in you. Just like that. So again, like I mentioned earlier, this is going to play exactly the same way rhythmically as the intro did, but now we just have lyrics. So we have 4 total measures. Our first measure right here is our 4 chord or E flat on Leave of Believe for 3 beats, and then our 4th beat of that measure is our 6 chord or G minor on In. We only hold that for 1 beat. And we have our 5 chord or F here at the end of You for full measure. Then we do it again. 4 chord or E flat on Leave of Believe for 3 beats. Our 6 chord or G minor on In for 1 beat, and then our last measure right here is our 5 chord or F at the end of You. All right, so I want to point out one thing before we move on, because I've done it in a couple sections of the song here, and I just want to bring it to your attention really quick. So one thing you've probably noticed is that as I'm playing through the song, as I'm counting in our sections, I go 1, 2, 3, I believe. And then I start playing, and that's because our melody is overlapping our measures previously, and we call those pickup notes. And so what's happening here is that this I believe, for example, in the refrain is actually these first few syllables are being sung over the very last beats up here. So we have a little bit of overlap between the measures of a previous section and the lyrics of the next one. And this is just a musical element that helps us transition from one section to the next. A lot of modern worship songs have pickup notes, and in fact, every section of this song so far is using pickup notes. So I just wanted to point that out. That's why like the sections don't always start on 1, or why these chords are starting on beat 1 of the section, but it's farther back into the lyrics. We have a few lyrics before we get to beat 1 of the official part of that song. So I just wanted to point that out. It's nothing too crazy, but just want to point out we do have some lyrics overlapping previous sections of the song, and we call those pickup notes. Great, so now we've covered the refrain. Let's look at the sheet music for the refrain. And we'll find that this plays pretty much like the intro. Nothing too crazy here in the refrain. So now let's move on to verse 3 in the chord chart. So here we are now in verse 3, and verse 3 is going to play very similar to verse 1 and 2, except we have some 1/3 chords or B flat over D here instead. So I'm going to play through it one time so you can see it. So here it is, 1, 2, 3. Release your love inside of me. Unleash your power for all to see. Spirit, come and fall on us. Over and over, oh Lord. So again, we have a lot of that E flat or 4 moving to our 6, where these are splitting one measure, 3 beats and 1 beat. But here, unlike verses 1 and 2, instead of holding our 5 chord for one whole measure, we're going to do the same thing rhythmically. This one gets 3 beats, and then we have our 1 over 3 or B flat over D on leash of unleash for 1 beat. So let's walk through this really quick. So here's our first measure. Here's our second measure right here, this 5 and 1 over 3. Our third measure is going to be our 4 chord or E flat on power for 3 beats, our 6 chord or G minor on all for 1 beat. Fourth measure starts here with our 5 chord just after between 2 and C here for 3 beats. Then we go to our 1 over 3 or B flat over D on it of spirit for 1 beat. Then we come to our 4 chord or E flat on come for 3 beats. Then we have our 1 chord or B flat here on the word on for 1 beat. Then we go to our 5 chord after us for 3 beats, our 1 over 3 or B flat over D on over for 1 beat. Then here at the end, instead of holding our E flat or 4 chord for 2 measures like we did in verses 1 and 2, here we're going to split this up back to this pattern again. So we've got our 4 or E flat on over for 3 beats, our G minor or 6 chord on O for 1 beat, and then our last measure of verse 3 is our 5 chord or F on Lord for a full measure. So this one is a little different. It's similar in a lot of ways to verses 1 and 2, but we do have a few more chords, especially these 1 over 3s here or B flat over D. So just don't get caught off guard by that. Great, but now let's look at the sheet music for verse 3, see if we have anything new going on. And here, we don't really have anything new here. This is actually going to play very similarly with the octaves, the way that verse 2 did here in the sheet music for verse 3. So nothing too crazy going on here, but then we do have a section here where we are adding some eighth notes here in the right hand as we're kind of building up to a new musical idea in the sheet music when we get to chorus the next time through the chorus. So again, nothing too complicated here, but just wanted to point that out. Great, let's go back to the chorus. So here we are in the chorus, and when we're playing this chorus in the block chord style, it's going to be the exact same as what we did earlier. So for the sake of time, we're going to skip over this in the block chord style based on the chord chart here. We still have 8 total measures here, and it plays the exact same lyrics, same chords, same everything. Finishes up here. Now let's look in the sheet music, and we're going to see something really different here now. So now, if we look at the chorus, we're now playing really low octaves down here in our left hand. And if this is really hard for you to read these notes all the way down here, just know that these notes are reflecting the chords listed up above here. So that can be a little guide to help you out through these low notes, because we're quite a few lines and spaces below the bass clef here on some of these. Good. Then our right hand, we're playing octaves a little bit higher up here. And we got some chords. Again, we got some eighth notes here kind of running through there at the end. But overall, it's not too complicated. Just know you're going to move your hands a little further apart on the piano. Again, we got these really low octaves here in the left hand and these kind of higher octaves here in the right hand. So if you don't have a full 88 key keyboard that you're playing on, this might be a little tough to do because we're spread out quite a bit on the piano. So if that's the case, I would just say you could drop off this lowest note in the left hand and just play just like that. There we go. So nothing super crazy and new in the sheet music for this section. Let's move on now to the bridge. All right, so now that we've gone through the chorus the second time, let's go ahead now and look at the bridge here in the chord chart. And I'm going to do what I did in previous sections. I'm going to play through it, say the lyrics, and then we'll break it down. So here it is. 1, 2, 3. God of exceedingly, God of abundantly, more than we ask or think. Lord, you will never fail. Your name is powerful. Your word's unstoppable. All things are possible in you. And there we go. So the bridge has 8 total measures, just like our verses, just like our choruses. So again, 8 kind of seems to be the magic number for the sections in this song. We have 8 total verses. Let's go ahead and break that down really quick. So we start with our 6th chord or G minor on the seed of exceedingly, and we're going to play that for 3 beats. Then our 1 chord or B flat here on of is going to get that last beat of the first measure. So here's our first measure right there. Then our second measure of the bridge, we play our 4 chord or E flat on abundantly for a measure. Then we go to our 1 chord or B flat on ask for a measure. Then we go to our 5 chord or F on never for a whole measure. So that's the first 4 measures of the bridge right here. And then this chord progression just simply repeats. So we have a 6 chord or G minor on powerful for 3 beats, our 1 chord or B flat on word for 1 beat. So this is our 5th measure in the bridge. We go to our 4 chord or E flat on stoppable of unstoppable for a full measure. Then our 1 chord or B flat here on possible for a measure, and then we finish with our 5-quarter F for a full measure kind of on the tail end of U here. So again, 8 total measures in the bridge, nothing too complicated. Just remember these 6-to-1 or G minor to B flat. This is in one measure, 3 beats, 1 beat, and the rest we all give 1 full measure to. Great, now let's look to the sheet music and see what's going on in our first time here through the bridge. And in this part of the song especially, a lot of the band's cut out. There's no drums here really. It's kind of bare minimum, I would say. It's kind of a minimalist approach here. So the bridge is going to kind of reflect that. We're really just playing the chord changes here, and especially in some of these sections, we're not even playing the full triads. We're just playing, like here in this E flat chord, we're just playing root and third. Here in this B flat, we're actually playing an inverted fifth with the root there as well. So we're kind of playing bare minimum chords here through this first time through the bridge. Nothing too complicated as we're working through. It's pretty similar to what we've already seen. So we'll keep moving on from that. And again, if you have any questions on how to play the sheet music, you're going to see at the end of this video in the playthrough, I'm playing through it so you can see the note for note part and how it lines up with the song. So if you have any questions, you can always refer to that. Great, let's go back to the chord chart now, and let's look through the second time through the bridge here. So here we are now in the second time through the bridge, and at this point in the song, the band's really starting to bring that energy, build it back up till we get to that huge final chorus in just a minute. But let's look through this bridge, and again, this bridge is going to play the exact same way the first time did if we're playing in the block chord style here. Same lyrics, same everything. So for the sake of time, we're going to skip over this repeat of the bridge, but let's look in the sheet music and see if we have anything different here. And we certainly do. So we were playing just kind of bare minimum block chords here, and now we've got some eighth note patterns happening here in the bridge. And I want to talk about these just for a second, because our left hand here is really just following our chord changes here, so nothing too crazy. You just got these root notes here in the left hand, but in the right hand we have a lot of eighth notes. But this looks really intimidating, but it's actually not quite that hard. So I'm just going to play these first couple measures here with the right hand. I'm going to count through it a little slower, and I'll show you how to put it together. So we are reaching fairly wide. We got an octave here, so we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just like that. And then second measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just like that. So pretty simple. Then our third measure, just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So not too hard. It's just, it looks a lot, but you're really just repeating the same few notes over and over. So when you put it with the left hand, it'll sound something like this. Just like that. So nothing too complicated. You're not changing a lot of the notes. It's just you're replaying them over and over in the eighth notes there in your right hand. So when we're counting anything at the eighth note level, to make it easier, remember we just count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because we're breaking our 4 beats down into 2, because 2 eighth notes equal 1 beat. So that's where we get the ands as well. So just make sure as you're playing this, you're just kind of counting through and keeping that steady eighth note beat, and you'll do great. And now that we've finished these first 3 measures that are really full of eighth notes, we move on to the fourth measure, and we see we've got more quarter notes now than eighth notes, and that continues here in the last 4 measures of our second time through the bridge. One thing I do want to point out here is that in the recording, it builds up and builds to this huge kind of end of the bridge, and then they like have a snare hit, and everybody cuts out on these last 2 beats. So when you're playing this, make sure you're playing this F chord here, 1, 2, 3, and you're out. Because that silence really is pretty cool. It's pretty dramatic. It really stands out as the vocals kind of lead us into that final huge chorus. So if you're playing along to the recording or playing in a live setting with a band, I highly recommend that you sit out those last 2 beats of the final measure of the bridge. Great. So we've covered that. Let's go back to the chorus. Here we are in the final chorus of Famous For, and this is going to play the exact same way the other choruses we have already played. So for the sake of time, we can skip over this in regards to the block chord style at least. Again, we have 8 total measures, same lyrics, same chord progression, nothing has changed. So we're through the chorus there. And now let's go to the sheet music, and we're going to see, similarly to what we had in the second time through the bridge, we've got some octave stretches here in our right hand way up here, but now we're adding a really low octave in our left hand, kind of like we had the second time through the chorus here. So it's kind of something like this: 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so that's kind of the first 4 measures here of the chorus. Again, you can refer to the playthrough at the end to see how it all ties together, but we do have those big octave stretches there. So again, if you're playing on a smaller keyboard like a 49 key or a 61 key, you may have to drop off this bottom note here in that left-hand octave. But overall, it's fairly similar to what we were doing in the bridge 2. So just make sure you're counting your way through it. Eighth notes, just remember we count that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you should have no problem with that. So now that we've covered this huge final chorus, and again, we're playing super loud, super big with the rest of the band, let's move on to the refrain after this chorus. All right, so now that we've covered the final huge chorus, let's go to the refrain, which is also a really big, energetic, emotional part of the song here. So in this final refrain, this is going to play a little different than what we had previously covered, but it's not too different. But I am going to go ahead and play through this just so you can see it with the lyrics, and we'll break it down. So 1, 2, 3, I believe in you, God, I believe in you. And there we go, just like that. So we have 4 total measures here in the refrain. We have our 4-quarter E flat on leave of believe for a full measure. Then we go to our 5-quarter F right on the tail end of U for a full measure as well. Then we go to our 6th chord or G minor on leave of believe the second time. That gets a whole measure. And then our 4th measure, we have 3 chords that fit inside this 4th measure. So we have our 5/7 on U for 2 beats, and that's our F over A chord. Then we go to our 1 chord or B flat on beat 3 of that measure for 1 beat. And then beat 4, we're actually playing our 1/3 or B flat over D on is, because these pickup notes now are leading us in here. So I'm going to show you how this transition works, because this is a little confusing and it was kind of hard to write it into a chord chart to help you really understand. So even though this here is beat 4 of this final measure up here, we put it down here just to make it a little easier to see how it lines up the lyrics. So I'm going to do this whole section again, but I'll show you how we tie it into verse 1. So here it is, 1, 2, 3, I believe in you, God, I believe in you. There is no fear, 'cause I believe. And that's how we tie this refrain into verse 1. So just remember, this is beat 4 of the last measure of our refrain up here. And that's how we play that in the block chord style. So again, we got 3 chords inside this final measure. 5/7, 1, 1/3, or F over A, B flat over D. Let's look in the sheet music, see if we have anything new going on. We just got quarter notes in the right hand, big octaves again up here. We still have these big octaves down below. So nothing different really here. Again, we have that F over A, B flat over D as well. Good, so we've covered that. Let's go to our final section here, which is the kind of the repeat of verse 1. And this is where the band all cuts out here as verse 1 starts. And this is going to play exactly the same as verse 1 did previously, which is pretty cool. So we'll walk through it really quick, and I'll show you how this ties together, but it's pretty much the same thing. So I'll start here on verse 1. So 1, 2, 3, there is no fear, 'cause I believe. There is no doubt, 'cause I have seen your faithfulness, my fortress, over and over. And we end the song on the 4 chord, which is our E flat. So we can hold this one out for a little while because the song kind of just fades out towards the end there. And that's it. So technically this section has 7 total measures instead of 8, because we're really going to like hold this final chord and just let it ring out, kind of like a fermata, or just hold it as long as we want. And we'll see that in the sheet music. But this plays exactly the same way as verse 1, just we don't have this 1/3 at the very beginning of the song, but we do at the end. But like I mentioned, this really is the last beat of this last measure up here. Great, so there we go. So nothing too complicated here at the end. Let's look at the sheet music and finish this song out. And now here in the sheet music, it gets pretty bare here as well. Again, we're playing just very simple chords. Just kind of like we did at the beginning and in verse 1 as well. And then we have this fermata here that just tells us we can hold the note as long as we want. If you're playing along with the recording, you can just hold it till it kind of fades out. There we go. We got to the end, guys. That was awesome. You did a really great job following along in this video today, and I know we covered a ton of information, but now you know everything you need to know to play Famous 4, I believe, and this song is so good, and I'm so excited you guys are taking the time to learn this song today. So like I mentioned, we have the chord chart, number chart, and sheet music in the lower right-hand corner of that webpage. Feel free to look at any of those. I think it's great to be able to play the song both in the block chord style from the chord chart and the sheet music. It just provides kind of two sides of the same coin, so I think that's really cool if you can do that. So definitely play around with the sheet music a little bit if you want to do that. But that's it for the end of this video today. One thing to point out is that underneath this video, you're going to see a comment box where you can leave questions. If you had any questions about this video or something just was confusing to you, please ask us a question. We would love to help you. There's no such thing as a bad question, because if you don't know the answer, how else are you going to know without asking? So please ask us. We'd love to help you. Also, if you watch this video, everything made sense, and you're crushing this song and you're playing it really well, let us know too. We'd love to hear that positive feedback in the comments as well. So now I'm about to play through this song with the recording so you can see how the note-for-note piano part all lines up together with the recording. But again, guys, we're so thankful you took the time to watch this video today. Thank you again, and we hope you guys have a great day.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us today in this tutorial. I hope you really enjoyed it and learned a lot through it. Make sure to subscribe to our channel here so you don't miss any of the new tutorials we have coming up. And make sure to check out those links in the description of this video so you don't miss out on the chord chart and you don't miss out on more and more worship song coaching for just $1 for the first 30 days. Check out those links, and we'll see you soon.